Hello, hello. It is Tammy with Cheers to Creativity, and we're going to paint the spring fox and friends. So I don't have the original with me. I actually am teaching this as a in-person party on Sunday, and they needed that for their sign-up. But I did do a second version of him where I just have the fox. Now when we do it today, we're going to do both the fox and the deer. And I'm on a little different size canvas because I didn't have an 11 by 14 available. But we're going to put you down here. And this is I think a 12 by 12. I'm not even sure. I think it's a 14 by 14 actually. Let me see if I can find us really quick. There we go. And we're on, so. All right. So I did this guy using, I think that was Indian turquoise. I'm not even sure, but really all you need is any kind of a light blue. I also have painted a smaller one here because I want to try something with just the fox when I do that. And you can just use a 3/4 inch brush, or if you wanted to, you can even use a bigger brush like a chip brush. So what I did was I actually just squirted some of the color on, both the color, I wanted my sky and a little bit of white. And for the sky, I'm just trying to blend these colors across. If you like to catch your edges, do that here too. And on the original, excuse me, the ground had a lot of the pinks in it. And when I did this guy, I brought in a little more of the spring greens and brown. But either way, so go down about, we're gonna call it 2/3 to 3/4 of a way. Then I'm just gonna take a paper towel, and whether it's my big brush or just this chip brush, I'm just gonna pull it off. I'm not even gonna clean it yet. And then choose, we're gonna need a little bit of brown and or green. We can always add more of the pink when we come back. So I'm just gonna grab a little brown and a little green. I'm gonna do the same kind of thing, just gonna back and forth blending. I've got something there I don't want. That would be the little goober. Remember, we can add as much of the flowers down here as we want. And while we want enough paint so that we can blend it nicely, you don't want it so thick that you're having to wait hours for it to dry. Even with the amount of paint I'm putting on this one, I'm gonna have to hit it with a blow dryer so I can actually, well, I can do our background first, our background trees first, but before we put our fox and deer on, we're gonna need for it to be dry. That doesn't matter if you're talking about doing it with, I don't know if I like that. Let's get rid of that. Whether you're going to be applying your pattern with graphite or just tracing it around it. Okay, so I have a little goober I want to get rid of, if I can. Well, maybe I can get rid of that. Oops. All right, on the original, I basically just had brown stems in the back. I'm going to go ahead and show you adding some of the birch trees as well. And I let some of those really light ones in the background happen while the paint was still pretty wet. And I just picked up a flat brush and I put paint on both sides of my flat brush by pulling it out of a puddle. And then I let the light ones just kind of come up. I started them kind of at the ground and just kind of pulled some up. And if you want them to have some branches, they can. Remember, we're coming in and we're going to be covering a lot of this up with branches and with foliage. I'm sorry, couldn't think of the word, but we can add a few in here. I know I'm gonna have one bigger tree that'll come up from over here. I'm just gonna add 1 or 2 bigger brown ones. These are just more my faint background trees. Again, you can put some of these branches in if you like. If you like the idea of having some birch trees, you can put them in now to be more faint, or you can wait to put them in when we dry it the first time, and they'll show up a little more. I like to have a little both, so again, both sides of my brush, and maybe I'll just pull an idea of a birch tree back here. Maybe I'm not even gonna be able to see them. Maybe a couple of them will cross. And those are just my very faint background trees. They're not going to show up a whole lot. Do want to make sure that they're grounded into something, but we'll also be adding some flowers there too. So with that, I'm going to need to dry this so I can put the next bit of trees on. Realized I could actually show you a couple of those trees on this one because it is dry. So if I wanted to say I wanted to see a couple, let's see some birch trees in my background. I'm just going up with the chisel edge of my brush. Maybe my birch trees are more on this side. And they don't have to show up completely. Just be a little bit. I can come back in and add some more detail into those by using a little bit of black paint. I haven't washed my brush out yet. I still have a little bit of white on there. I'm going to pull the black just like I did the white, so I have a little bit of black on both sides, but it'll be more of a gray. And then I can just, for the background ones, just lay down a little bit of markings to make these birch trees. You can line them if you want. I think I'm just going to make these so there's just a little bit of detail on them. This over here too. Just barely setting it down and pulling just a little bit. Now, even those background birches can have, I'm really losing my voice today, can have some skinny little branches coming off of them. Those are usually done in your black. So just pull a little line here. Maybe have a little one that comes off here. These are in your background, so they should be pretty faint. Oops, I just put black paint on my, we'll have to make sure there's a tree or something there. All right, so as I'm letting this big one dry, I'm gonna go ahead and put in my main tree that's gonna have my friend on it. And so I know that he's going to sit about here. So I just want to use that as an idea for a guide. That so he's going to be looking up. My bird probably is going to need to be sitting about right there. So I think with that being said, I'm going to grab a round brush. And I'm going to make, so I know my birdie needs to be sitting about here. So I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to give it the idea of where that branch is going to go. And then I can come and actually make my tree. So I'm going to start it down in the grass here on my side. And I'm just pulling up from my trunk. And then I'm going to start pulling branches from my trunk so that I have lots of places for my lovely pink flowers to come off of. So pulling it off, so you're pulling little V's off, and they're going to get a little skinnier as they go. If you need to, you can add a little bit of water to your paint to make it flow a little better. This is just kind of the bonus what I'm showing you guys. So you can do things like this on a wrapped canvas, make it kind of be fun to have part of your design on the side. Part straight on. Okay, we're just gonna let that hang out for a little bit. Boop, boop, boop. And I'll come in here. Are these dry enough? I think they are. So again, I've got to kind of have an idea of where I'm going to want my critters to be. So I'm going to give it a little idea that this is where the big branch that I'm going to be having my bird sit on. It's just a little line. But that way I can know that it's going to go back to, let's call it this tree. This will start here. I'm going to pull it down a little more into the foreground. And let's start with the trunk by pulling up. I might need a little more paint. I'm using dark chocolate or burnt umber would work too. And if I find that my background is still too wet, I might have to hit it with a blow dryer some more. So I'm picking up a lot of that background color. So it just tells me it's not quite dry enough. It's okay, we'll just hit it again. That should do it. Okay. Back to my trunk. So here's my trunk of my tree. I'm going to pull it up and I can start making branches come off any which way I want. Again, we're going to be hiding a lot with our foliage, especially up high, but put some of these branches in just in case you get to see them through some of the flowers that we're going to put on here. And then the branch that I have for my birdie to sit on might have a few little branches that come off. You can make your branches with a round, with a liner, or even with the chisel edge of your flat brushes. So that's going to be my main tree there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black with my brown, and I'm just going to give him some bark lines. Now you can do your bark lines either or both ways. You just want to give him a little bit of interest. Let's see if I can bring you down a little bit more. Oops, there, I think we're okay. Good. All right, I'm going to just show I think I'm going to show a birch tree on the other side of them because I've got these light ones behind. I did not do anything else to these in the background ones, but like I said, I can add just a couple little marks for them so they look more like the birch trees in the back. No, they're very faint. The idea of very light outline of this one using my background. Here's one of my trees that's going to come back over. A few more extra branches. Don't worry if some of your trees aren't quite connected to the ground because we're going to add some foliage to that too. But I'm going to grab my white here again and my flat brush that I'm pulling the paint off both sides, and I'm just going to do one about here. And I'm going to want this one to be a little more solid, so I'm just going to make sure I have enough paint. Go right over that tree because it's a background tree. We've got a branch that comes out here a little bit. And I think I'm going to have maybe one more that kind of comes up, and maybe he kind of turns a little, goes this way. And just make sure that the trees that are in your foreground you can see pretty well. Okay. And again, I'm going to wipe my brush, but I'm not going to clean it. I'm going to pick up the black on each side of it. And you can just lay it down and give little flicks to make little marks to make the birch trees. You do not have to outline them, but if you like a more distinct tree, you can. I put birch marks on each side, and I'll even go with my chisel or the little corner of my brush and add a few darker ones here and there. Maybe this one has a little bit of a branch that comes off. So those are our trees. Okay. Rinse my brush out. Now the first thing I do want to make sure is that those very background trees have something that they're set in. So whether you use green or brown, we're going to still be pouncing our flowers over them, but I just want you to make sure, and if we pick up a little bit both of it, to just kind of give it an idea that they are set in something. They don't all have to be even. Does not have to be an even horizon line by any means. And then take those greens and browns and make sure your, oops, that might be a little too much brown on my part. Just really make sure that those foreground trees are setting in some ground. Just make them a little more grounded. Grounded, that's what they are, they're grounded. Okay. So I've got that going on for us. Rinsing my brush. I'm going to dry that again so I can put my animals on. All right. I'm going to start with this guy. And then I'm just going to have this little fox guy. But I want to show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set him down where I want him to go. And I'm just going to take a pencil and outline him. If you've traced your pattern on, printed your pattern out or traced him on tracing paper, you can just apply the basic outline shape. Don't need any details of your critters. I know his tail's going to go around, but I think I can freehand that. So that's what I've got. Okay. Then I'm going to put in this one too. I'm just going to make sure both my friends are on here. So I'm going to make that. I think that'll work pretty well. Maybe him over a little further. Okay, I think that'll be good. So I'm going to go around my deer. And again, I'm not putting any details on them. I'm just going around their basic shapes. Say this often, and I've been saying it a lot lately, but remember, your pattern is your guide. You don't have to follow it exactly. If, for instance, when I printed out the leg, if one seemed like it was a little too fat, I don't have to paint it exactly like my pattern is. So I've got my deer. I'm going to put in my little fox. Okay, we got my little fox. So that's where we're at for right now. Now, you can look at your fox and decide if you're going to have a little bit of a white tummy. You might want to just give yourself a little line for that. Same is true for the deer too. The deer can have a little bit of a white tummy, a little more whiteness in his tummy. But you don't have to have that. They can be solid colors. And I'm doing my fox like a red fox and my deer like a brown deer, but I know that there are variations, and so do you. So remember, this is your piece. You don't have to do it exactly like me. I'm going to start on the fox, and I'm going to start with some buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, you can add just a tiny bit of brown to your white, just so you have a little more of a ivoryish color. And then we're going to take my round brush, I think. Whatever brush is most comfortable for you, you're just going to fill in your fox's tail for right now. Just his tail. I take that back, his tail, and go ahead and fill in his little tummy if he has one. This may need more than one coat. Now go ahead and fill him in here too. Oops. I didn't give him a tummy, but I'm going to give him one now. And his little tail. And I just wrapped my tail around. Wipe your brush off and pour yourself some of your orange brown. This is red spice. Burnt sienna would work really well as well. And I've not cleaned my brush. I'm just picking it up. And I'm going to pull a little bit of this color right next to the fox into the tail, about halfway. And on the very top of it, I'm just going to try almost like a little bit of an outline. So I'll do that on this guy too. I'm just going to start pulling a little color in, letting it get softer so it's harsh, more harsh right next to his body. We'll give that a second coat in just a little bit here. You can rinse your brush out, or you can just go straight as it is. Fill in your fox with this reddish brown color. Again, use whatever brush is most comfortable for you to just fill this little guy in. If your tail is dry enough, you can actually pull a little more of that red from the body in toward the tail. Mine's not quite dry enough yet on this guy, so I think I'll just set him up. And I'm going to fill in the body of this one. Sorry, my head is in the way. Let's try to get you guys a little more this way and me sitting up a little better. Foxes have kind of pointy rounded ears and a rounded pointy snout, so not completely pointy. We want them to be a little more round in the snouty area. I'll see how his tail is. I'm pulling a little more, so it's a little deeper. I'm going to wipe my brush off with the reddish brown, and I'm going to go into the brown I used for my trees, so just your dark chocolate or your burnt umber. And I'm going to go around his backside, kind of like his bottom, and I'm just going to kind of pull that color in a little bit, and that'll create a little bit of shading on his rump. A little bit of shading on his bottom, his rump. And I'm going to pull a little brown while it's still wet, like where the curve from his neck to his body goes, so we can add a little shading there. And then I'm going to go next to the orange where it kind of meets up with the tummy area. So we're going to shade it there a little bit. And I like to shade a little bit inside his ear. Oh, we forgot the little light in his ear. I got to grab a little light color for his ear too. I might do that right this second. There's a little tiny bit of buttermilk inside his ear. And we want to do that while it's still kind of wet so that that color kind of blends, because we don't want him to be, he doesn't have a white center. He's just a light center, lighter center. So I did that on that guy. I can go back to my brown. I've already done his rump. I'm going to kind of go around a little bit, right next to his belly-ish area. Maybe a little bit where his neck is turning here. And I think it helps set in his ear a little bit. Just a little bit of shading. You can go a little bit around his head if you'd like. But it blends easily because it's still pretty wet. Now I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to go back to my red color, my reddish brown color, and I really want to make sure I've got enough color in his tail. Don't worry if it ends up looking too liney, because we can come back with the buttermilk the opposite way and soften it if we need to. But I just went, oops. That was a mistake. Hang on. So, mistake like that. I ended up putting black on my tail. I don't want black on my tail. I'm rinsing my brush so my brush is clean, and I'm just taking a clean brush and going over that. Now, yes, I probably will remove some of my paint, but I can get a lot of that black out if I just go back in with a clean brush. It's just paint, so there's really no mistakes. So I'm just going to come backwards with my light color and go back, and then I'm just going to let that dry, and I can come back in and fill it in with the reddish color. Hey, it's just a mistake. Mistakes happen. I'm noticing that he's a little light up in this area, so I'm just going to give him a little more paint. Okay. I'm going to have to let that tail get finished before I can go on to the next step with him. So I'm going to switch over to this guy for a second. Again, I was making sure I'd pulled in enough of the red so it looked nice and had nice coloring. I'm going to make sure he comes down over here a little bit too, around my edge. So the way I created his legs was I took my little round brush, or you can take a little flat brush, and I took my brown, and right next to his belly, I drew a line down, okay? And I gave it a little space, basically to the end of his belly, and I drew another line down. So those are his legs. And then his paws are just a little bit of a oval at the bottom. Now, most likely you're going to have to give that more than one coat, but that's okay. So I'm going to see if I can fix this really quick. Excuse me. There. Good as new. Good as new. So I can do the same thing on this guy. I'm going to pick up my little bit of brown, and I'm going to come straight down from his belly. That's going to do is help separate his his body from his tail, and then I'm going to give it a little space and come down again. Now his belly wasn't as wide. I might need to widen his belly up a little bit. Pulled a little bit of that red fox in there too, but I don't mind that. So if your belly is very light, you can always pick up a little bit of the red fox color and pull a little bit in, maybe from his chin down. Maybe he's got a little bit, just a little more color right on the very edge of him. If you like it as the one color, that can just stay two. I got a little, I think I had too much water in my brush. I do. We'll just fix him a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to give my little foxes another coat on their brown little legs. If it doesn't show up, you can always add a little bit of black to your brown, and that will help it show up a little better. I might do that with this one. Just a little bit of an oval. Just to make him look like little legs here. All right. Let's move on to the deer. And again, I filled his belly in with the buttermilk color, the lighter color. And I know I'm probably going to have to do it another coat because we're covering up all that background. But that's fine. While we're waiting for that, we can go ahead and fill in your little deer with the brown color. And again, this is where I said it, remember you have the liberty that you can change the shape of his legs a little bit if you need to. I might need to go to a bigger brush for this. But he's just going to get base coated in. Base coat right over everything that you've done in your background and your foreground. Go up around his back, his neck. We want this to be good, solid coverage. So that probably means a blow dryer and a second coat. Other thing we could have done is we could have given the fox his first coat and given our deer its first coat, and then come back and finish them each individually. Something I can remember for when I am teaching this on Sunday, that might be a much better option for them. Little ear that's pointing back. We'll see the inside of that ear. We won't see the inside of this one because it's going to facing the other way. Take your time filling them in. Probably one of the big reasons that I suggest that you have an opportunity to watch the whole video first and then kind of go back and do this at your own pace, because I tend to be a pretty fast painter and you certainly don't have to keep up with me as far as the base coating and things like that. You can definitely do this at your own pace. So he's got his first coat on. He's going to need a second coat. I'm not liking that I can see just this tiny bit of tree back there, and so while I can kind of see that, I'm just going to kind of come in and fill that area in with my green brown color. I think that'll make more sense than me trying to make that work. But he still can have that one bit that's behind him. I can still get in there with some fun flowers here in a bit. I'm going to go ahead and give his front area just a little deeper color first. And you may notice as your fox starts to dry, his colors you may find a spot that may need a little more coverage. I think his little ear could use just a tiny bit more. But if you needed to give yours a second coat, you most likely are going to have to hit it with a blow dryer or just let it dry. Because if I go to give it a second coat now and it's not completely dry, I'll just pick up that paint. All right, let's see if we can give him a second coat. His tummy still looks awful light to me. Light as in not enough paint coverage. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit him just one more time real quick. Okay, let's get the ivory out of my brush. And I can base coat him with this dark chocolate again. And when this second base coat is on here is when I'll do my shading for this deer. And I'm doing all my shading for these animals today, kind of wet on wet, just kind of so I can add a little more depth and dimension to them. Peek at something super quick. There he is. Okay, I've got him in here. I'm going to add a little shading to this guy. And the shading is going to get done with black, but you might want to just mix the black with your brown so you don't have too harsh of a color. Before I do that though, let me get my little ears in here. I'm going to wipe my brush off so most of the paint is off, and I'm going to use the chisel edge of a little flat brush and kind of almost outline the front of him. And then I'm going to pull just a tiny bit of that color in toward his tummy area. And I might pull a little bit back in from the body toward that front area as well. Okay. While I have that light color, I'm going to go around his back leg. And I'm going to think about going up, and where it starts to angle, I'm just going to pull a little bit of this lighter color. Sure I am. I did have a little bit of lighter. Pick a little bit of that lighter color. I'm just going to let it kind of angle up. It looks a little funny right now. I'm going to go right across his belly a little bit, okay? Pull a little bit across his belly till you get to the front leg. So we're going to kind of come up at that angle, and that's what that little bit of buttermilk that we're going to wipe off on our brush. So we're going to have very little on, okay? Now, either using the black or the black and brown mixed together, I'm using the chisel edge of my brush, and I'm going to kind of lay that little bit of color on his second leg and pull down. So I can shade a little bit underneath here, so help make that leg look like it's behind. And right underneath where I did that little highlighting here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull a little bit of the black brown down. I'm going to go around his rump, right below his tail, pull a little bit of that darker color down and in towards the deer. And now I'm mixing my brown and my black together. right as we start coming down his neck, as it turns, we want to pull a little bit of this dark brown black. You might even want to distinguish how his tail is kind of connected to his bum. And I separated his ears with a little bit of the black. I want just a little bit in the curve of his front of his face. Just a little bit. I'm going to go back to my round brush and go back to my buttermilk. And I'm going to make sure I've got some white in his ear and a little bit of white tipping coming down from his tail. I'm going to do this first. So this is the buttermilk. I'm putting it in first. While it's wet, I can come back with the brown and pull back into it, and that'll soften it. Oops. I forgot to rinse my brush out. This is my brown. I'm going to just pull back so it makes it lighter and pull back in this way. And that softens him. Okay. We're going to do the details on our fox and our deer before we add our flowers. I'm just going to make sure my fox's legs and feet are showing up enough. The details on them are both very simple, but they just kind of help make him pop a little bit. With a small round or a small liner and black, I'm just going to give them each a little tip on the top of their nose. And then they each have a little eye. And your eye can literally just be a simple little slash so that he can have a closed eye, or oops, oh shoot, it went away, hang on. There. You can have just that little slash in his eye, or you can have him almost like a little Hershey kiss eye. I'll show you this in just one sec. Almost like a tiny little triangle on top of his eye. And you can even add eyelashes if you want, but that's really all you need is the little, either just that little line so he's got a closed eye, or he can have a little bit of a triangle on top of that for his full eye. And then if you want to get fancy and pull some eyelashes, you can. If you are giving him a full eye though, I would suggest giving him a very tiny dot of white with the tip of your brush, or even use you can even use a toothpick. I'm going to use just my brush and just give him a tiny little highlight. Okay. Now, I have kept my fox and my deer very simple. Something that would really add some more dimension, especially to the little fox, is to go in with your with shades of your your reddish brown, and give him some little slashes, little hair marks. And I would make those with the red brown color. I would do some with the red brown plus press the brown, so make a darker shade color, or a darker color, and just give him a few little extra little hairs here and there. I'm just doing this with a little bit of a liner brush, but you could break out something like a, I'm gonna grab one here. This is a wisp brush or a rake brush. I'll grab and see how that works with this guy. I'm gonna grab a couple little brown. I'm mixing brown and the burnt sienna together. It's just kind of fun to add some little extra texture to him. Because foxes are kind of a little more hairy than we're making him. You could do that with the deer as well. Okay, so we have our deer. We now need to go and add some flowers and such to our piece. I'm using a bright pink, and if you want to have some purple in there too, you can either just grab a blue or a purple, or chances are you can mix this color with the blue of your sky to get a more purpley color. So here's what I'm going to do. Before I even do that, I'm going to use a little bit of the green I had. And I'm just going to use a little flat brush, and I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to flick some leaves. Okay? I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just flicking some leaves that are going to kind of come off these branches. So wherever I'm going to have some of these flowers showing up. Don't have to do a lot of them. If this is a hard thing to do, I'm going to show you the other way we can do this, but I'm just going to grab a couple here and flick my leaves. The other way we could do this is to use a tiny bit of a sponge and pick up a little bit of green, really tap it off in your paper towel, and then lightly come in here and tap some greenery. Now don't get your whole sponge dirty because you're going to need your sponge for our pinks that are going to come about, okay? So find a clean place on your plate and pick up some pink. And you can start with the straight pink. And I'm going to just tap it on and be light. Don't put too much pressure on it. But these are nice, soft pink flowers. You decide how much are showing where. Even if we're not seeing the brown trees over here, go ahead and tap a little bit on your ground if you can. If it's too hard to use a sponge on the ground, go ahead and grab something like either a well-loved brush, something that's been a little more frayed, or even a stippling brush. So I'm going to pick this up for here. Make sure I've got some pink flowers in my background here. Then before you clean that pink out of your brush, pick up some white and go ahead and do some of this with some white too. So you have some pink and some white, so you're going to have a lighter shade. A little more pink going on. I'm going to see if my blue will work with this to make a purple or not. I'm not sure it will. If not, I will go grab a darker one. I like the purples in there too. I thought that worked pretty. Pick up some more white. Really want this one to look like it's kind of framed in that pink and purple, so I'm going to make sure I get my corners really well. I'll do this one too. I've got this on my brush, my sponge. Lighten this up a little bit. I'm going to bring some of this down here for this one. Okay, if I want it to be more purple, let's see what happens if I mix it with my, my light blue that I used gives me kind of a lilac-y color. But if I want it to be darker, I could pick up a darker blue, just like, this is just a primary blue. I'm going to mix that with the pink to get a little more purple color, I think. I wouldn't go straight blue because the colors of, this kind of reminds me of the cherry blossoms and all those. You've got a little bit of the purples that show through, or sometimes in your crab apples. It's just fun to have the extra colors. Down in here. Now, make sure you're leaving some room on your branch, because I maybe did not do such a good job with that, so that we can actually see our little birdie. Get some more white paint. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. Well, I'm trying some of these paints. These paints are not working so well, so that one needs to be fixed. Just grabbing a little more white, tapping it to soften some of these. You can even go straight white. It's definitely got very purpley up here. Let's just gonna lighten that up. Okay. Now, if by chance you kind of lost a place for your birdie, you always could come back in with a little bit of that background and white color and kind of just sneak some extra space in for your bird to sit. I think that's going to be okay, though. I think it'll be okay. We'll do our final details on him after we get we'll get the bird on, and then we'll come into the final flowers and fill in those extra spaces where the animals are sitting. If you know your deer would be standing alone, he would need little hooves, so he would probably have little black hooves. Let's give him little black hooves. I think he's going to be sitting in some grass here in a second, but let's just go ahead and give him some little black hooves. All right, this is where we need our little bit of red. And we're going to put a little birdie in the tree. Now I'm going to do the cardinal on this one. I'm going to make a different color bird up on him just so he's a little different. So this is going to be our very simplistic cardinal. So we're going to start with putting an oval on the branch. Just a little oval on the branch. Then his head is going to be a circle, but its circle is going to be half on his body and half off. I'm going to do this on a piece of paper first. One would think I would always have a piece of paper nearby. So we're going to start with an oval. Okay, just an oval. I'm making this one really big. So just create an oval. Then we're going to do the circle, but we're not going to do it on top of the oval. We're going to do about half on and half above. And it's about a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Or this is our branch. And his wing, again, here's our oval. And our head. And our wing is going to be about half on the body and about half off the body. And you're going to want to see his tail come from behind him, just a little bit showing behind. And it might show a little bit underneath your branch. If he's a cardinal, he's going to have a comb that's going to come straight from his head, like a triangle, and then come back down. And then you might need to broaden the back of him a little bit. So I just kind of came up from his circle head and kind of made a little triangle. You can make him a little more fluffy if you want. You might have to adjust to make his belly a little bigger to go onto your branch. Your shading will be very simple because he's very little. So just a little bit underneath his wing, maybe a little under his chin. But then we know a cardinal has his mask. It's almost like a 7 that you fill in. Come up and make like a 7 and fill in. And that will give us a place to put a beak. Don't have my yellow out right now, so I'm just going to use my orange-brown. A beak will be a little triangle, and you have a little dot for his eye. So, switch into a brush that I can do this with. So I've already done my oval for my body and my little circle for my head. Now I'm going to give him a wing that's about half on his body and half off of his body. It's like a teardrop shape. Then I want to see a little bit of his tail. Maybe I see a little bit here. Maybe I see a little bit sticking down. Now he could just be a red bird like this. I'm going to make his wing a little bigger. With the red still in my paint, I'm going to pick up a little bit of black. And it's just shading a little underneath that wing, a little bit under his head. Oops, I'm sorry. We are totally off camera. I'm so sorry. Let's try that again. So I did his wing. He's like a little pointed teardrop. And then we have a little bit of black under his wing, a little bit under his head. And if he is a cardinal, we're going to give him his crown. That's going to start from his head, his round little head. Make a little triangle that goes up and down. And you may need to broaden his backside a little bit. A cardinal will have a black mask. He's tiny, guys. And I said I just did that, I thought about like a 7 for an area to start filling him in on. With a fine brush, you can even pull in a couple little detailed marks in his crown if you want, or feathers inside his wing. With a dot of yellow, or not a dot, a little line of yellow can be his beak, or you can make it orange. I'm making an orange with red and yellow. And then you can just give him a little dot for his eye, or he's pretty small. You wouldn't need to do such. Now, once you get your bird in, you're going to want to make sure that you have some little branches that extend out from the branch that he's sitting on. You might want to pull a few extra flowers over there. And you can make your flowers either with that sponge or with like a little small scruffy brush. You want to see some of your branches more come back through your flowers. Just pull some more of the brown through. Feel like any of your leaves are just kind of floating in midair, you can connect them. said I was going to do a different color bird on this one, and I think I will. I think I'm going to make him more like, we're just going to make him a simple blue bird, okay? So I'm going to go into a darker blue. I'm going to pick up a little blue and a little white. And I'm going to let him sit here. He's going to be my little oval first. All right, there's my oval. And then I have a circle that is half on the body and half off the body. He's going to have a little bit of a wing, so kind of a teardrop that's half on, half off. Might make it a little bigger. And this guy, I'm going to pick up a little more white, or the buttermilk is fine. And I'm going to lighten his belly a little bit. Oops. Oops. Picked up the wrong color, sorry. Pick a little the darker blue. I just used primary blue to make him primary blue and white, so I can go back to straight primary blue to like really define where his wing is. Maybe you can see a little bit of his tail popping through down here. And he too is going to get just a little tiny beak. Just get this little beak, and then I'm just going to give him the tip of my brush. I'm going to give him a little tiny, teeny little eye. He's very, very tiny. You certainly could make him a little bigger. All right, so now we have to get our animals sitting where they belong. So first check your fox's legs and feet to make sure that you can see that they're dark enough, because they do like to fade a little bit. So I'm just to make sure that mine are defined enough so I can see such. Then I'm going to take first some, oops, I keep putting my face in my head in front of you. I'm going to take a little bit of my brown, and I'm just going to use the side of my brush, and I'm just going to put a little bit of brown right underneath my fox, right underneath my deer's feet. And I'll either take the chisel edge of my brush, or I can use a liner brush or a round brush. And I'm going to start pulling up some, using the chisel edge, I'm going to start pulling up some grasses. And if the green doesn't show up, mix it with some brown or mix it with some white so you have some different shades, or mix it with a little yellow. There's a little yellow. Spring grass is going to be more on the yellowy green than the housery dark green that I tend to use. But pull some of these little grasses in different shades up around their feet, here and there in the grassy areas. If our little fox has been sitting a while, she's probably got some grass around her there too. But pull the grasses here and there. And then you're going to want to make sure that right on your horizon line, that by either using a scruffy brush, the sponge is probably going to be a little too much, but I'm going to go with a scruffy brush, and I'm going to make sure I've got some flowers that are happening on my horizon line. And I'm going to do different colors here in a second. Oh, there's my pinks. Make sure I have some flowers that are growing up already by my tree a little bit. Mix it with a little of this color. some white to lighten it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a straight line. I might have some add some more distinct details, some smaller patches of flowers up in your trees. Really lighten some of this up with some white added to your pink, or even straight white, so you lighten some of that up too. And just really make sure everything is grounded. By that your animals are sitting in some ground. I might want a little darker green. Just here and there. So I'm going to go in with my liner brush, and I did pick up just a little darker green. I don't want a lot of it, but I want to feel like his really light there. So I'm just going to pull a couple more darker green too. Whenever you can add more than one color, you just add a different value and a little more interest. And you'll have spots like in here that you might decide I could really use a little more foliage, or maybe I just want to see more branches popping through there. That's just going to be a little more of a personal preference. Remember, branches can cross. It is spring. I'm going to add a couple little small branches coming off my tree too. I added a few more up here. Even use a little bit of the brown in your foreground. All right, so that is what we have for Fox and Friends. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'd love to see your finished piece. Till I see you again, be kind and be safe. Cheers.